All right, well, FedEx dropped off some new toys for me today, and we're gonna get into testing out our QuickJacks here. So let's open up the boxes and read some manuals and see what I need to do. First box is opened up. It says don't take back to the store. Give me a list of what's actually in box 3 of 3. And then inside of here, well, let's look and see what's in this box. So we got power unit, some rubber pads, some hose assemblies, NPT fittings. Looks like everything's checked off by an actual human being, which is pretty cool. So here's all that stuff. Does not look like there's a manual in here yet for setup. Maybe it's down at the bottom, or maybe it's in one of the other boxes. All right, well, we got the boxes moved over into the other garage because there just wasn't enough room next to my BMW. I'm gonna cut them open real quick and see what's inside the big ones. We'll say these things are packed quite nicely. So Ben Pack does a pretty good job of packaging them because they're in little mini crates inside of an actual cardboard box. And here we go. Our new QuickJacks. It comes with a little handle here, and I was reading the manual. Looks like these guys just slide underneath somewhere up here to make it easier to carry it around. So maybe it just slides underneath. So let me lift it up, and then, I don't know. I'll have to read the manual a little bit further because it does have wheels, as you can see down at this end. So once you get it up in the air, it's a little bit easier to move around. But picking it up, it is pretty heavy. They're probably 80 or 90 pounds per side. So we'll get the other one out of the box now and then start taking apart the accessory kit and seeing where that takes us. Manual, which I did not actually look at yet from here. I just looked it up online. Now that I've moved this box over, let's start digging through it. So we got rubber blocks, standoff blocks. There's a couple of these in there. Parts list that we already went through. Got short hoses, hydraulic hoses that we'll need to put on. Let's see, longer hoses that we'll need to put on. Just 2 of those, 1 for each side. Another block, and these blocks are kind of like Legos. They lock into each other so they don't slide around too much. I mean, not perfect, but they're not going to slide sideways. Well, let's see what else is in there. A couple more blocks. Block. And block. We got a box over here. Let's see what's in here. All right, so these are all my fittings, quick disconnects for the hydraulic lines, and then looks like some thread locker for when I put the hydraulic lines on. So we'll get into that in a little bit. And then this is our pump, main unit here. There's a handle or something on this. And we got 4 more blocks down at the bottom of the box. And that's it. That's everything inside the third box. Okay, got the pump out, the main pump unit, and here's our controls on it. So we got our up and down controls on here. This is where our main hydraulic lines go, and then motor and compressor itself, and then the reservoir tank for the hydraulic fluid. And it looks like, I don't know, maybe there's an airline or something. I gotta read the manual, see what this is down here. Maybe that's just a drain or something, access line. It also looks like there's little feet on the bottom of this here, and it sits nice and stable on the ground. So you probably can just leave it and carry it around with this nice little handle when you disconnect it. And hopefully there's enough disconnects so that you can disconnect the lines and also keep it all connected or wound up here, so I can put this in the corner and slide the big jacks off on the side when I'm not using it. Let's read further in the manual and see what we need to do next. So this is our checklist here. And we are basically just at number 5 now. So we just unpacked everything. Actually, we're at number 6. So got the assembly kit, which is this down here. And locate and examine air and hydraulic cylinders. I did that already. So now we got to install the hydraulic elbow fittings. So let's go ahead and figure out where those are. I mean, I know where they are. They're physically right here. But I'm pretty sure these guys, since these are compression fittings on one side and threaded on the other, I bet you these just screw right into the rails. But I'm going to read the manual just to make sure. So we're going to take and install these into the rails themselves, which, as you can see, I've got it right here. So they're going to go right into these guys. And then it says that you got to make sure that those get run when the lines get plugged in back underneath this. So there's a place underneath here somewhere that I got to look at that'll allow us to do that. But let's install these with the thread locker on both sides and see where we go. So these things ship with Torx 40 plugs in them, at least the 7000EXT does. And it's a pretty tight fit in here. Kind of hard to see, I think, from the camera angle. But I can't actually get a socket in this little space, but that's okay. My Torx 40 socket is actually also a 1/4 inch insert, so I'm just gonna use a 1/4 inch wrench on here and crack it open. They're not very tight. Once you crack them initially, you can just kind of zip them off like this. Once the plug's out, then I just grab my elbow, take the protectors off of that, and a little bit of the thread locker, which looks like I got to cut open. Alright, so put a little bit of thread locker on the inside here. Did I not cut it off enough? Oh. Is this already an open bottle? It is. Alright. Not a whole heck of a lot of thread locker in here. Good. Put that on. And then just thread it in. Make sure it's nice and clean first before you do that. And in this case, I'm pointing down. I don't know if that's going to be a problem. It says in the manual here to actually have it not pointing up, but to be kind of pointing sideways to connect the hose. And it also says to tighten to about 11 to 12 foot-pounds. I'm just doing this by finger. 11 to 12 foot-pounds isn't much. Oh, there's a locker in here that lets me, I can actually loosen this up, it looks like, and slide the, yeah. So there's an adjuster nut on here. that allow me to actually tighten that down. So once I get this in right, say slide that down a little bit, maybe slide this down a little further so that it can't rotate as far. Can I get one more out of it? Yeah, let's see. I want it to be right about there. And now, yeah, gonna tighten that down the rest of the way. So now we just need a wrench to go on here, and then we can tighten that down to about 11 to 12 foot-pounds. I don't have a wrench, a torque wrench. I only have a torque socket set, so I'm just gonna have to kind of do it by hand. But I guess the general gist here is don't over-tighten it, because you could have a problem if you do that. And for anybody that is watching this, it's an 11/16 wrench on this to actually tighten this guy up. There we go, that should be tight enough. Now we gotta do the same thing on the other side. And then, like normal, you have to take it all apart again because you realize that you didn't put the thread locker on. And so you zip it off. All right, we got these in now. So the next thing to do is prepare our short hydraulic hoses. And these go directly to the female end goes directly to the elbow. And the male end actually gets our quick disconnect, which is one of these attached to it. And then those get run underneath here so that they're not ever pinched by anything, I believe. So we're gonna thread lock that and put it together. This is not an 11/16 nut, probably a 5/8. No, this one looks like it's metric. Go figure. $17mm. Next up, it's the quick releases for the lines. So same deal as before. Thread seal it. And then this is a 17 there, and bigger than an 11/16 here, so I'm gonna have to go get yet another wrench. Seven-eighths on the big side, and whoops, wrong one. 17mm on this side. We can tighten this down. And that line's complete. Gotta go do the same thing on the other side. Well, as with everything, had I just turned the page from where I was to the next one, I would have found out that it wanted actually the male quick connect attached to the short hose. I did the female quick connects. I don't know if that's that big of a deal. I don't think it really is. I mean, they're just quick connects for hydraulic lines, so they're going to be reversed in my case. Next thing I got to do is route the line underneath the backs of the frames themselves, and then we set up the quick connects on the long lines as well. Next up, we've just got to put the connectors, the female quick connects, on the long hose. I'm just going to use my vise to do that since they're not actually attached to the rail. Next up, now that we've got our lines complete, so here we can see both of our lines have their quick disconnect fittings on them. We've got to pressurize the air cylinders, so that means firing up our compressor and letting it build up a little pressure, and then it says put between 40 and 50 psi, so I'll probably put 45 in because that's right in between, and move on to the next step. So these things come with their little Schrader valves on them. And it comes with a cap, and the cap's got a quick depressurize too, so if you ever need to lessen the pressure, and then we just go up to about 45, it says. I don't know how long it'll take. It's a pretty small canister, so. There we go, 45 psi on this side. Do the same on the other side, and we're good pressurized with those. Right at 45. Next up, we've got to find a location for the power unit. Okay, cool, it's up front. Jacks are behind me on either side, so should run no problem. And then what we want to do is connect these guys, which are going to connect into those little sockets right there. And we're ready to kind of plug things in and start testing. Does look like these have been run and tested because there's a little bit of fluid in there, but not enough to be dripping out. Probably would have been easier to see if I would have done that in reverse order. And this is also 7/8 wrench. Just barely. Okay. Getting pretty close to the finish line now. It just wants us to power up the unit for our next step. I've got the standard 110 one, so it's just a wall plug. Just gonna run a plug over, plug it into the wall. It doesn't actually say to test anything or hit up or down because it doesn't want you to actually use it. I'm guessing it's just to make sure it works before you start putting fluid in it, because our next step is actually filling the fluid reservoir. And the fluid reservoir is right here. It's got a little breather valve on it, so we crack that open, put in ATF, crack the breather valve, and then we just connect the lines and test it out. Another dummy learning experience here, and this is just me being stupid and lazy. I got a stack of good known fluids over here, and then normally underneath this pile of crap, I have a stack of bad known fluids, just things that I've dumped and emptied into, or empty containers. And I had that ATF over on this side accidentally. I did not place it over in the spent side with all the other crap, and therefore I put bad fluid into my brand new unit that now I gotta drain back out and go get fresh fluid. Moved it up onto the bench, attached my ratchet to the drain plug here. I'm just gonna hopefully, crank it open and loosen it up the rest of the way, get it overhanging as much as I can without it falling off the bench. And pull our breather over here so that there's air entering. And now I think I just got to sit and let this thing wait and drip dry for a little bit. Looking at this a little closer, it looks like the tank itself just feeds into this unit, and then that's a relief valve, not necessarily a drain valve. So I should be able to actually just take this hose clamp off, take the entire reservoir off itself, drain it out, clean it out a little bit, and then connect it back up, and we should be good to go. Well, this pickup looks like it's plastic, so I'm just going to have to, and there's obviously a magnet to pick up shavings in there. I'm going to use just a cloth to try to drag this down, and maybe I might dampen it with a little degreaser, but I don't want to use anything that's harsh on plastic to clean this up. And I basically just used a bunch of shop towels to clean the inside of it, cleaned it up as best I could, and then I took one damp rag, put some Simple Green on it, as well as the water, and then I washed it out with that, and then immediately took 2 more dry rags and dried it all off, and now it's pretty much, even though it looks a little glazy, it's dry to the touch in there, should be good to go. We'll put it back together and then do things right this time. All right, I'm back from the store. I went out and got a little bit of hydraulic oil. It's just the real stuff. We don't need to use ATF because this was cheaper. And now we're gonna fill up the tank and give these things a test go. And what did we learn? Don't use old engine oil when you're trying to fill hydraulic fluid because you'll waste a lot of time trying to fix things. Ugh, I hate getting hydraulic fluid on my hands. Yeah. Just feels so gross. This funnel seals a little too well.
One eternity later.
We can see that there is about a ½ inch. I don't know if it's picking up quite well on the GoPro, but a ½ inch between the level and the top, which is what the instructions say. So now we just put our cap back on, wherever the hell I put it, right here. Hand tight's good enough on this, and then you crack the bleeder so that there's air that can get out of here as it burps the system by itself, and we're good to go. All right, we're getting down pretty low here. We just have to connect our hydraulic hoses, bleed it, review the final checklist, and then we can test it out and get a car up in the air. So let's connect our lines and then do the bleeding procedure. All right, what I recognized as soon as I was about to do all this is that my QuickJacks are facing towards the garage door for the lines, which means that I would pretty much have to run over the central lines when I'm bringing the car in the garage to actually use them. So I'm gonna rotate them around 180 so that we can hook them up without the car ever needing to cross the lines, and then plug in the lines, bleed them, and give it a test. Okay, so to bleed this thing, that's the very last thing we gotta do is lift it up. It says lift it up from the end that does not have the locks on it, and then which is the upper half of the cylinder. So if we're looking at the cylinder itself, it's this side here that actually has the line on it, because that's what, sorry, this side here. Well, now I gotta read the manual again. No, the bleed valve's right here. So this is the side that's got to go up so that air can flow to the top, fluid can flow to the bottom. And once we lift that up, we just crack it to let any air out. We'll use our blocks to actually do that. It says stacked like this, so 2 tall blocks and 1 medium block should be good, and put it under the middle. And then we're done. Instructions now say once the frames are lifted up, raise and lower both of them about 8 inches 3 times. It says they may lower unevenly, so we just got to be careful with our fingers and stuff like that. And then we put a rag underneath the screw and bleed it, loosen the bleed screw, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and do that. So now that those are raised and lowered a few times just to get most of the fluid into the system, now we got to bleed these. And the process is, first I got to crack this open until no more air comes out, close it again, raise up the jack slightly, so I got to do both sides first, and then once they've been raised up slightly, crack them again and let the remaining bits of air come out when there's a slight amount of load on them, and actually press the piston in ever so slightly too to push that last little bit of air out, and then we're ready to throw them under the car and give them a test drive. Let's crack this guy. It's a 9/16 Allen wrench that you'll need for this. There we go. Heard the air come out, and no more air coming out on this side. So tighten it back up. Wipe that off, go to the other side. I got no more air coming out here, so we'll tighten this one up. Next, we gotta hit up for just a few seconds to push a little bit more air towards the bleeder. So we hit up for 1,000, 2, 1,000, all right. So we got a little bit up there towards the top. And now we bleed it one more time. All right, so now these are up ever so slightly. We'll crack them again. we go, no more air, mix of fluid and air, so tighten it up again. Go do the same thing on the other side. Yeah, we got a mix of fluid and air. All right. No more air coming out. And then last but not least, we got to crack both of them and then hit up for a few seconds just to push the last bit out. That's going to push some fluid out too, so I want to get another rag and put it in both places. Now the rag in place, I'm going to crack both bleeders a little, so there's just a little bit of fluid coming out of each. Just a drizzle. There we go. That should be good there. And then we go hit up for a few seconds. So 1,000, 2, 1,000, there we go. And that's pushing the last little bit of air and fluid out. We can hear the air being pushed out. Maybe do that one more time. And no more air in either. We've got a bunch of fluid that came out, some frothy fluid, which means it was full of air on both sides. Now we just tighten these up, lower them down, and we are good to go. After you do that bleeding, you definitely want to close those bleeders before you lower them. If you don't do that, it's going to suck air back into the cylinders, just like a brake line would or something along those lines. So now here we go. We lower them down. And we can see they're actually lowering down nice and cleanly and evenly now. No jerkiness. Both down on the ground, all fluid back in the reservoir. We're ready to put a car under here or above here. I have got the QuickJacks underneath right now. They're a tight fit because I got the extended ones. They're right up against the front frame rail here on the Sky and right up against the rear tire. So we should see if this will work. I'm gonna crank them up just a little bit here and see if they're lining up properly. So let's go get down below and see. Rubber block. Well, we're pinching on this, on the fender liner on this side. Let's go take a look at the other side. Not too concerned about that, but it's obviously not a safe position to jack it up with. So let's go look at the other side, see how it is. All right, on this side, we're right up where we want to be on that frame rail, and our one in the rear is where it needs to be. So I just have to, I think, take the fender liner and cut it back a little bit. Again, with this being a track car, I'm not too worried about that. I'll just cut a little notch in it so it can collapse safely on the other side, and then we'll jack it up. And we can see here that fender liner is right where the block is, which needs to go up against the frame rail right here. And so I'm just gonna literally cut it out with some tin snips because I don't care about these 1.5 inches of fender liner. I don't know if I can get at it from here. All right, I'm gonna have to put down the camera to do the rest of this. All right, so that little cut I made actually worked out okay because when I popped the little pop rivet here, it actually let me fold it over enough to get it out of the way of the frame rail. And now when we lift it up, it should be right underneath it, right there. And we should be able to lift her up. That's it's actually on that little piece of metal there. So, but that's holding up. That's actually holding the weight of the car, so maybe I just move my block over there. It looks like it might actually be a jack point. All right, let's do that. All right, we got it done, and the car is up in the air, and it gets up there pretty damn high. So here we are, I'll zoom out, and we can see we got quite a bit of clearance from the ground frame right now. And if we go underneath the car from the front, I got all the room in the world under there to get up and work. And this is a little tiny car. I think on some of the bigger cars I've got, this will be even better. So I'm pretty happy. It feels really stable on here. It's not wobbly or anything along those lines. Everything seems pretty solid. I'm gonna crawl underneath with a creeper as my last thing of the day and see how much room I got, and then we're done. So I did notice this, now that it's at full height, it actually dug into the tire and is depressing it a little bit. And I think I could probably fix that and mitigate that by just, when we get to the first lock zone here, instead of the second lock zone, I can pop the wheels off if I need to. It's not hurting anything like that. I wouldn't want to leave it like that for a week or two just because it'll make a dent in the tire. But just to work on something for the day, no big deal. Oh yeah, lots of room down here. Lots of muck down here too. Look at that. There's a bunch of mud. First time I've actually been under the car for any period of time. Let's see what we got. It's not looking too bad. All right. Well, that's it for this week. See you next week.